Mike, are we live?
I wonder who Eden is.
I'm not sure I let them in, so we're going to see. Oh, we are live. Thanks, Michael. All right, why don't we wait just another moment or two here before we begin so we have enough folks here. Hi, Jessica. We just talked about how great the book sale was, Manny. Almost rivaling past year numbers, which is fantastic.
It was great. I saw Kevin at the book sale.
Even I participated. Yes.
Did you load up with the bag sale at the end? Were you?
I did not. I was a Thursday entrant. I was on the early end. So Janice made me pay a premium.
The pender's tax.
Exactly.
There's Joyce.
No, we had Nyla. That's where Janice saw Nyla calling. Nyla and I went in on Thursday and wandered high and low, and grabbed a few good things and headed back home. We brought our own bag.
That's allowed on Thursday.
It's on Thursday. Yep. Trained professionals.
All right. Well, why don't we get started? We're now at 7 o'clock. Hi, Joyce.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Hey, Joyce.
All right. We are called to order. First order of business on the agenda, I'm actually going to suggest we postpone. I believe Christine is planning to join. Maybe she's just held up here. So why don't we come back to the election of officers and board reorg. And if we want to move to the next items on the agenda. Manny, does that sound all right to you?
That sounds good to me.
All right. So next up, Jessica's going to give us an update on summer reading program. Actually, I'm sorry, do we do roll call first? I believe we do.
Oh, yeah.
See, I'm getting rusty. Maybe this is the last one of our online meetings. Let's knock on wood on that. All right. So our board trustees, board and library meeting for May 18th. First, Catherine Uden.
Present.
Kevin Penders.
Here.
Joyce Parlapiato.
Here.
And Colin Ernst here. We are waiting on Christine Eichel-Freeman. And we also have Manny Leet, Jessica Henderson, and Pam Riccio from the Boyden Library. There's Christine just about to join us. I've submitted her to the room. We have Jan Forsato from the Friends of the Boyden Library. And we have Mike Weber and our friends at Foxborough Cable Access helping us out once again. And we appreciate it. And we'll give Christine just a moment to join, and then we'll have her do her own little roll call. And then we'll resume. Hey, Christine.
Hi. Sorry I'm late.
Not a problem. We were just getting started. We were just doing roll call. So last but not least, Christine Eichel-Freeman.
Here.
There we go. All right. All right. So why don't we hop back with our on our planned agenda here. And the first, I'm just looking at my agenda over here. That's why I'm staring at the left, is our election of officers and board reorganization. So we need to elect a chair, a vice chair, and a clerk of our Boyden trustees. You all have endured the past 2 years with me as board chair, willing to hand over the baton or the gavel. Excuse me, anyone who's interested. Are there any interested parties in stepping into the chair role for the 2021 year? If not, I'm happy to continue if there's a nomination.
So I would nominate Colin Ernst to continue as board chair for the 2021-2022 cycle.
And I second that.
Thank you, Joyce. All in favor?
Aye.
We'll go around and we'll do our roll. Yep. Catherine Uden.
I fully endorse this.
Thank you. Not just an I fully endorse. Kevin Penders.
I thank Colin for being willing to do it for another year. Yes.
Thank you, Kevin. Joyce Parlapiato.
Same here. I approve.
Thank you. Christine Iger-Freeman.
You have my support, Colin, and thank you very much for doing it for another year. We appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you, Christine. And I will abstain my vote. So it carries 4-0-1. Okay. Thank you for your trust. Thank you for your support. And you're stuck with me for another year. So moving on to the role of vice chair. Now the role of vice chair, Deb Stone served in this role last year. We know Deb's term is up, so we have a vacancy in that role. Are there any interested parties in serving or any nominations for the role of vice chair?
I'm happy to serve if there is a nomination to support you, Colin.
Yep. I'll nominate Kevin for the role of vice chair.
I second it.
Thank you, Catherine Uden, seconded. And all in favor. We'll start with Catherine Uden.
I support this nomination.
Next, Kevin.
I abstain.
Joyce Parlapiano.
Absolutely. It looks like it's going to be a good year.
Christine Igo-Freeman.
I support Kevin, and thank you, Kevin.
Thank you. And I support Kevin for this with great thanks. So we are 4-0-1. Thank you, Kevin, for serving the role of vice chair. And third, we have the role of clerk. Christine Igo-Freeman has served as clerk this past year. Christine, are you interested in serving again, or are there others who are interested in stepping up into this role?
I'm happy to do it. If someone else would like to do it, I can step aside.
Hearing no arms raised, I'll nominate Christine Igo-Freeman for the role of clerk with great thanks for her service and continued service.
Second.
Second. Second by Joyce Parlapiato. All right, and roll call vote. Catherine Uden.
I recommend or endorse this.
Thank you. Kevin Penders.
Aye.
Joyce Parlapiato.
Thank you, Christine. Yes.
Christine Igo-Freeman.
I'll abstain, and thank you for your support.
Now I'm going to slow Catherine's line and say I fully support Christine Igo-Freeman. So we are 4-0-1 again. And Christine, thank you for your continued service in the role.
Thank you.
All righty. We also have our subcommittee roles and liaison roles. Manny, I don't have the full list in front of me. Do you have that in front of you that you can walk us through there? I apologize. I should get my handy binder in front of me.
I don't have it in front of me. And Kevin, maybe you can give me a hand trying to do this. I know one is personnel, correct?
Correct. Yep. There's personnel, which typically deals with advising the director on personnel matters as they arise. We don't do contract negotiations. That is through town hall. Although if Manny does have an issue with respect to the union contract that he needs to go to somebody with outside the meeting, he can do that with the personnel committee, subcommittee. The next one after that, Manny, would be the gift funds or the funds committee that works with Bartholomew, something that Deb did such a great job at in her role, to maintain the trust and gift funds that have been presented to the library that we are now the stewards of. The one after that would be budget. A couple of people to represent the library before AdCom and Town Hall as needed on budgetary items. That's three. Those are
buildings.
Yep,
facilities?
I have facilities. Yep,
buildings
that's
and
another one.
facilities would be a fourth.
I have events as well, the event
And then
committee.
Correct. We did the events committee in lieu of a technology committee. I think we moved away from that a couple of years ago to the events committee for the purposes of maintaining the Spinny speaker series and other items as they came up.
And then the final one I have is in strategic planning, which has kind of been on hiatus for the past 14, 15 months.
Do we need that? Well, I guess my question would be whether or not these, and this is something we revisit or try to revisit annually, is whether or not these are the right committees and measure mix for the group, and if they still serve a purpose for because they're not dictated by the bylaws. They're a creation of a former and slightly senile chair, being me. So, you know, there is no actual obligation that we have these specific groups for these specific purposes. It's really just to facilitate the opportunity for meetings or issues to be addressed in between the meetings, and for those to be addressed in a non-quorum manner to get into issues associated with the open meeting law. So if we have 6, I guess the question, which is what I think we just rattled off there, I guess the question is whether or not those are appropriate going forward in this new year, and something that we as a trustees group feel like we're getting sufficient use out of, rather than just assigning people to chair subcommittees and then staff subcommittees that we may not actually need. So I throw that open as a question. I mean, I don't think there's any question we need the AdCom. I don't think the budget committee. I don't think there's any question that we need the events committee. And I think there's been value of the gifts committee in prior years, but I'm not sure to what degree that's an active and open item that doesn't just affect all of us for update purposes. So I just use those as examples.
Mm-hmm.
What do folks think? Any of them seem as they are no longer necessary? If we identify 2 that should stick around, or are there areas that are missing that we feel like we need to have attention in a subcommittee fashion that's not on our regular agenda with quorum and public visibility?
I think I just need a little more clarification on what responsibilities each of the titles or departments have. So I don't, I just really feel like I don't know enough about them.
So may I, Colin?
Please.
Okay. So I'll take them in order again, if I'm able to. Let's see if I get them right. Mm-hmm. So the budget committee is exactly what it sounds like. It's the budget committee typically has been a member or 2 of the executive board, at least the chair, or if the chair cannot do it for whatever reason, then the vice chair, to serve in a role to work with Manny to help develop the budget, to walk through that for us as we get to the fiscal year process, to represent the library before AdCom and Town Hall, and then if questions do come up at town meeting, to get up and speak to it. So it's natural that somebody from the executive board needs to be a part of that, because they're the de facto leaders of our voice. And obviously any sort of ultimate issues and recommendations that the budget committee is making are being approved by the full board, but it's to allow for that work to go forward rather than just doing it 1 month to 1 month, because there's too much that happens in the November to end of February timeframe, and beyond, depending on certain years and certain issues, that it requires that not being noticed discussion. Otherwise, things will never get done on a time-sensitive manner. So that's what the budget group does. And again, the goal here, there's 6 members of the board. The goal here is to not put any more than 3 members on any subcommittee, because then you get into quorum issues and we step on each other. So that's what the budget group does. The event planning committee was created a couple of years ago, largely to address the long-term planning options for the Spinny speaker series and and not only the keynote speaker, but the events that wrap around that, and to be able to get a couple of people in a room with Manny or with Kathy Belharney or with Jessica, and plan, in advance, and make, decisions for the library as that event series comes together, so that they can be dealing with things real time and reporting back to the full board and getting our inputs and our blessings where needed, and so that can continue to go forward. Because in reality, if we meet 9 times a year or 10 times a year, that event doesn't happen. So that is usually chaired by someone. Again, Deb, Christine, I think Catherine has been involved in it in the past, but those, they can tell you more about the particular roles that are involved there. But it goes along with, are we doing it at the Rodman Center if it's open? Are we, who is it that we're engaging and bringing in, like Chris Bojalian or Gregory Maguire a couple of years ago? What other events are we doing around it? And what's the theme that we're tying that all together with? Things like that. And how do we do that for the different age groups? So that we truly have the town's engagement in that series of events. So that's what the events committee is doing, or has done. Facilities is exactly what it sounds like. We didn't have a facility subcommittee for a number of years because we had because we didn't have a building. We were in renovated status or in rented space. And then when we came back, we said, everything's under warranty. We don't need that for a while. But now we've been back, fortunately, long enough that things come up and issues come up, and Manny needs somebody to bounce more immediate concerns about chillers and condensers and this leak over here and the new electronic boards I want to put up over there and things of that nature. And so that frees him up to go to people, have a dedicated couple of people that he can go to, again, in between meetings with issues that then, he can bounce those ideas off of and then report back, and then everybody can report back to the full board when decisions are made, if those decisions require board input or just to keep us all informed of what was decided. So that's that one. Personnel, as I talked about, is, in the event that there are union concerns that are brought to the director's office that require our input. Some of those things would be if there's a grievance about state of emergency days or a storm outage. The other thing, that the principal thing that the personnel committee does is the personnel committee is responsible to send out, receive, and then marry the inputs from the 6 of us into one document for the evaluation of the director, which happens on an annual basis. So again, the budget committee is on an annual basis, but it's got a long lead time. Facilities is sort of as needed because you don't know when the air conditioning won't work or the heat will go on in August. The events committee is, again, a long lead time look that culminates in that month of the series itself. Personnel happens on an annual basis, so that ideally the evaluation is for the director is done before the town does its own evaluation, so that we are informing that process rather than reacting to it. But it's a cyclical, mostly 2-month window that should take place in. Gift funds or gifts and trusts is the committee that works with Bartholomew, serves as a point of contact for Bartholomew, the financial investor. Once upon a time, before we had Bartholomew, that committee was tending to those funds on its own. So now we have a fund manager, and that role is really evolved now, thanks to Deb's work and others previously, into the caretaker point of contact for fund management. So, and they're the ones who usually, typically now, their goal would be to reach out to the fund a couple times a year, check on the fund management and the state of that, and then to schedule 1 or 2 meetings with the fund managers for the full board to engage in conversations and just sort of take the wellness of fund management. Which one am I forgetting, Manny?
The last one is strategic planning.
So strategic planning, did we have strategic planning as a standing subcommittee?
We do have it listed, but that might be one we could discuss.
So Manny several years ago undertook a strategic long-range plan. Christine, I believe, served on that committee with me. And if somebody else on this committee did, then I apologize for forgetting who that is. But Christine and I, under the Mass Board of Library Commissioners auspices, we're required to do a long-range plan every couple of years on a cyclical basis, which talks about, areas of strength, areas of growth, targeted areas of opportunity that we want to see employed in the next horizon period to make changes. So discussions we've had in the last 2 years, for example, about a young adults librarian is an outgrowth of the strategic plan. So with that, we had a forecast, long-range forecast initiative. We had several members. We had a couple of members of the library staff. We had members of the library community, the patrons. We had 2 members of the trustees. We had the director. We had somebody from town hall. And we used that to sort of canvass the population to get a sense of what people were using the library for and what people wished we had that they weren't available, that wasn't available to them, so that we could do that sort of strategic planning to, what is our long look horizon and how do we go about making the library as useful for the patrons as possible. So I don't, if we formalize that as a subcommittee, I admit I've since forgotten that. But the outgrowth of the strategic plan initiative was to serve as a touchstone document. Manny has a document. As a matter of fact, we all may have it in our trustee handbooks now. But Manny, put together a strategic plan, which he filed with the Board of Library Commissioners, which sits as our vision document, if you will. And then that should be revisited on a periodic basis. And I think, Manny, it's once every 5 years, but I don't know if that's an accurate statement.
That is correct.
Okay. So I'd like to think we have another year or two before we have to do that again.
Yeah, FY26.
Okay.
So we're good.
So really the strategic planning subcommittee would be just charged to implement the outcome of the last strategic plan before undertaking another one for FY26. As we're going into FY22 now, my personal takeaway would be I'm not sure that
can rest.
That committee needs to be an active committee. In fact, I think we're all sort of left with needing to implement the strategic plan either way. But that's just of all of them, I think that's the one that probably we would need the least.
I appreciate that review.
Sure.
Thank you.
Are there any areas, I think there's an opportunity to maybe potentially cull that list. Let's come back to that in a sec. Are there any areas, I know last year was an unusual year, to say the least. But as we think now, are there any glaring areas where we want to have a couple folks dedicated to drive us forward? And knowing that we can always, if at some point during the year we say, hey, if we want to really tackle this topic, we can tag a couple folks to lead that effort. But anything that stands out as a board right now that we want to establish a subcommittee for? Yeah, Christine.
I'm happy to stay on the events committee, if that's okay. If anyone would like to join me,
Actually, Christine, that's the area where I'm most attracted to. Yeah, okay. I would love that for, overview and guidance. That'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Excellent.
You're welcome.
Excellent. Any other new committees that we should be?
I guess my question would be to Manny. I'm actually wondering, from your experience working at different libraries, what other committees have you seen that you could suggest or would be useful or that we're lacking?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much covered. I mean, I have seen committees for marketing or promotion of the library. So I've seen that before, but I've seen, I mean, in East Bridgewater, it was a building committee because we were hoping to have a new building. We've had one for facilities, which we have here, one for, finance, budget, which we do have. So I'd say the only one we're omitting would be the marketing one. And I don't know if we could tie that into, I mean, we could in the event committee. Yeah.
Yeah.
There is sort of a hand in hand.
I guess I would just ask those who have worked on it before how much that would. The way I think of it is these are sort of one-off items for activity among, and just for context, Catherine, the subcommittee structure we have here came from another library. It's not to make it right or wrong, but just for historical relevance there. That's where it came from. I guess from marketing, I would just question whether or not for Joyce, well, Joyce hasn't done it yet, but for Christine and for Catherine, to the extent that you were involved in that too last time around, whether that would take away from what you're trying to accomplish with the events themselves, rather than, does it stack things up on you in order to be successful with quote unquote both? Or does it become, is it a natural fit to just be marketing and events?
So I guess my question is who does the marketing right now? It's staff. So
correct.
Right. So it seems as if it would go hand in hand for me if working with staff to organize the events or plan them as well as market them. It seems like a natural fit to me.
When we think about kind of the marketing, communications, and events, I think about the events it's tied mostly to the Spinny series, right? That's what we've kind of talked about, or any sort of similar annual series. I think there's, from a marketing communication standpoint, in terms of the ongoing functioning of the library, that's really a year-round aspect of the business of the library. Case in point, the website. Excellent example of marketing communications. And I think the library and its staff, library staff, I should say, the library, the building doesn't do it. The library staff do a great job of communications in our community. Excellent job. And what my recommendation will be is if we believe there's an opportunity to add support and guidance and counsel to the work they do, maybe it's a marketing communications subcommittee that's really thinking year round, including, the website, including, the PR kinds of things, the social media, right? Again, it's not doing the work. It's advising and giving counsel as a board of trustees. And that marketing communication subcommittee could then tag in and collaborate with the events group, right? To help that. But I would suggest teasing those two apart.
Okay. My reaction would be to agree with that as well. And that's that's exactly why I asked the question. It seems to me like they are discrete enough. They certainly overlap because you want to market the event. But and again, these subcommittees are designed to serve as a year-round resource for their areas of specialty, rather than for just a default operating arm. So I agree in that context where staff has done such a great job, whether it's on the website or on Facebook or on other media, getting on the reporter, getting things out there for folks to know about what's happening. It seems like having a support resource from the trustees that doesn't require a full board meeting to discuss something is a worthwhile resource. Right. Colin, the only other thing I wanted to add regarding subcommittees, and then I will be quiet and let others do it, is I think if personnel, going back to the personnel committee, if the personnel committee's charge is really to do the annual evaluation and be available to Manny on personnel issues as they arise, I would think that a lot of that could be absorbed within the existing executive structure. I would think that the clerk could send the evaluation around and compile it rather than having a subcommittee to do that. And I would think that if there are personnel issues that Manny needs to bring to the board, he could bring it to the chair.
What do folks think about that?
I liked it.
Great. That sounds good.
I liked it a lot.
Right.
That was more of a relic of an era where the trustees were more involved in the union process.
Right.
And that has changed.
One other, as we're kind of in the culling part of the discussion, we can always go back to the add-on, but the culling part of the discussion, the gift funds, it seems like the real heavy lift has been done on getting the Bartholomew relationship set up, and is that something that the correspondence with Bartholomew could also be something that's within our officer structure to handle that? Because right now, unless I'm mistaken, most of those engagements with Bartholomew have been them coming to our meetings, sharing out us talking about that in our monthly discussion. So is that something that just the liaison with Bartholomew, Christina, and the clerk role, would you be comfortable handling that as well?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yep.
Great. Any objections or differing ideas?
No, that's wonderful.
Great. All right. Any other committees that we think need to be added, or are we good for now? And we'll see what bubbles up during the year. I like the addition of the marketing communications group. I think that makes a ton of sense. All right, so why don't we have, I'll go through, we have buildings, facilities, we have budget and AdCom, we have events, we have marketing communications, and I think strategic planning we took off the list, correct?
Right.
So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Super. So we're each scrubbing in on 1 to 2 of those. I don't think we need to have 3 people stacked on each of them, and leave some space for our eventual 6th trustee as well. So if I can make maybe just a couple suggestions, then we can raise our hands. But I'd like from a budget and AdCom standpoint, I'd like to have the chair and the vice chair on that committee. Mm-hmm. And then on the MarCom, Catherine, would you like to serve on that group?
Yeah.
Excellent. And Christine and Joyce have already raised their hands for the events subcommittee, which is fantastic. Buildings and facilities, Kevin, given that you were here when they laid the first brick, would you like to be on that? That sounded meaner than I wanted it to be.
Yep.
Okay, awesome. All right, so we've got, I guess, 1 more on the communication, 1 more on the buildings and facilities.
I can do buildings and facilities with Kevin.
Okay, great.
Excellent.
And then marketing communications.
I'm happy to do that, unless someone else wants to.
George, do you have,
so based on that, does everybody have 2?
Well, and I'd be happy to also with the marketing. So we're treating that as 2 separate.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But I think I would argue that having somebody on both will help with the overlap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I suggest, I want to be cognizant or sensitive to the fact, Christine, we've tagged you with 2 two of the tasks of the subcommittees we have done away with. So, of course, we're all, we can all scrub in sub quorum on any of these, but I'm going to suggest maybe Joyce tag up with Catherine, because we're kind of loading you up with a bunch of stuff.
Okay.
Above and beyond.
Okay.
That sound good?
Yeah,
All right. So just to recap, we have, sorry?
That's great. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Mm.
So we have buildings and facilities is Kevin and Catherine. We have budget and AdCom is Kevin and Colin. We have events is Christine and Joyce, and we have marketing communications, Catherine and Joyce. So I'm the only slacker that's not either taking on new tasks like Christine and on a second committee. So
It's the privilege of the chair.
There we go. Perks. Excellent. Any other thoughts before we conclude this part of our discussion, or anything that we've missed in terms of officers and board reorganization?
Only that, as you pointed out, when we have our eventual sixth member, we'll need to find some opportunities for their engagement as well. But that may free up some of the double dippers.
And I think, for someone that's newer to the board, maybe a third member on those so they can learn a bit more context of what's going on.
Definitely.
Excellent. So just as we transition out of that topic, I failed to, at the start of our conversation, to congratulate Joyce on her election to the board.
Mandate of the people. Congratulations to you both.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And as you know, there was a write-in candidate who secured enough votes, and there's ongoing discussion with Town Hall on whether that individual is deciding to move forward with that and join us. So stay tuned. There are, we won't go into this in this meeting, but both Bob Cutler and I have reached out, and we're hopeful that an individual will join us, and will be, I know it will be a great addition to our group. So stay tuned there.
Nice.
Colin, in the event that candidate does not join us, I would just note for you that I did receive a call from another individual who was anticipating that the seat might be empty, and that they would and that they had some interest in taking it.
Okay, excellent. I appreciate that. We'll keep everyone posted on that. And if you would mind, Kevin, keeping that individual that you've spoken to posted on where things stand, and extend our appreciation for their interest in.
I have done so. Yep.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. Next on the agenda, thank you, Jessica, for your patience as we've worked through all of our structural gymnastics here. We'd love to hear about the summer reading program.
Right. Well, it relates to both events and marketing and communication.
Huh.
So I feel very on topic. On marketing, we recently purchased a product called Wowberry, which is a software to help us market the library collection. Wowberry does a weekly email of the newest books, movies, and music at the library. It can also do social media posts. So if you're on Facebook, you may have seen posts of new children's materials and new adult materials. And Wowberry also offers widgets for the website that can be, a children's widget, a teen widget, an adult widget. And I like Wowberry because it's easy to use. So you set up your alert once and then it's done. And it stays that way until you change it. I'm enrolling people for the newsletter who are registering for programs. And I have that stipulation in the program description that by registering, you will be, subscribed to get an email about the newest books, movies, and music at the Boyden Library. So new, fun marketing product. And slightly different, but also, since I'm on the topic of digital products, I've purchased some new databases after talking to the school media specialists. So I communicated with them via email about what databases that the library had that they were happy with, what they're using, what they might like to see. And I've added Scholastic Bookflix, which is a very high quality fiction, nonfiction, read aloud, engaging product. And then we have Scholastic Teachables, which is teacher support and would also be storytime support, which has a lot of handouts for teaching, young kids. Lightbox is reference teen health and wellness, in trying to up teen services. I'm hoping that having a high quality, good source of information about the really tough health issues that teens go through, mental and physical health, will be good. Also, Teen Book Cloud, Bob Rossetti, is in favor of, and that's a database of ebooks and e-audio with a range of things from classics that they might have as assignments as well as graphic novels. So those are new products that will go on the website when it's up and running. And then on summer reading, we have a hefty series of events planned. I've started doing outdoor story time at Payson, it's wonderful. It's a wonderful location. There's ample parking. It's quiet. The playground's lovely, can hold a lot of people. So I've started some outdoor programming. And then for the summer reading program itself, we have a teen kickoff party with henna tattoos and ice cream. We have a few magic shows, Big Ryan's Tall Tales, a puppet show, and then the teddy bear picnic is on Thursday, July 22nd. Margie wrote a proposal asking for Pat Patriot to come. We're hoping that maybe that'll happen as an added. The band is new. So it's Rockabye Beats. They're a bilingual band that works with, very young kids, and they seem really lively and energetic. And we're, just trying to make the event as exciting as we can. And the Commons is a big space, so lots of people. And then I have a couple more teen programs. I have metal smithing, which is there's a copper bookmark and a copper keychain. One is for middle school and one is for high school. I had talked to kids before and they had said, middle school students and high school students are really different. We're in different ages, program for us separately, at least sometimes. So I have a session, that's 10 to 14 and a session that's 14 to 19. I also have a comic drawing program for teens. So right now everything is scheduled outside. And we're taking registration and it's exciting.
Wow, a lot going on. Phenomenal.
Thank you.
Questions from the board?
I have a quick question about the wildberry. So I'm just poking around on it and the website as well as what you've been posting. And so it automatically posts what's going on. Is that how it, like a set it and forget it, as we like to call?
So Wildberry it markets the collection.
Right.
So it draws items that have been added to the collection that week. And I've scheduled, and I've been playing around with it. So, some of the posts are inconsistent. It's because I'm learning how to use it. But I've scheduled a weekly Saturday 10 a.m. of new children's items. And then I think it's a weekly Wednesday of all new items. So 2 posts a week. And I hope that's a good amount. I really want one that's just children's since I buy those. Since I buy the children's, I like to see a beautiful email of all the things that I've bought that have been added to my collection. And I like it because it's, I buy them, I see them on the shelf, I see them on Wildberry, and it's, it's specific to Boyden. Versus our catalog, our catalog, which is all of sales.
Yeah. So you basically can click like children's and click like this, and it funnels it down and sends it out at the times that you schedule.
Yes, it is not perfect. Okay. It is technology. And sometimes you try to do something and it like doesn't work right. But yes, it is automatic. It is scheduling automatic posts.
Yeah. Good.
And
Like, set it and forget it is good. But again, you can modify it and change it. And there's all sorts of stuff that can happen.
It's set it and forget it. And for people who want to subscribe to the newsletter, they can subscribe and they get it once a week. Jeff, the owner, his suggestion to me was that I enroll people myself rather than asking them to subscribe. But yes, it's all set it and forget it, all of it. And the widgets for the website, same thing, just a scroll of new books that's always updating.
Yeah.
Quick question on you said the owner said you should be subscribing people to the newsletter. Could you just say a little bit more about that?
So right now, when you register for a children's event, I have on there, by registering for this event, you will get a weekly email alert of the newest books, movies, and music at the Boyden Library. So I'm,
So they've opted in, so they're not.
Yes, and they're also, when they subscribe to events, they're also getting added to constant contact email lists. And, and again, it's like, you can unsubscribe at any time.
Yep. Great. Other questions or feedback?
Oh, very exciting.
Second that. Yeah, Jessica, it sounds like you've got a great summer plan for folks. Thank you very much for your creativity and your continued engagement for them. That's awesome.
Thank you. My staff is still working hard on all their kits and all their grab and goes. And they really like doing them and people really like getting them. So we have the weekly grab and go crafts. They're really popular. We're going to keep doing them all summer. Casey has a STEM challenge and she's looking at more ideas for kits. I think kits is a COVID development that will continue after COVID. Like people, they like coming to the library to get an activity kit that they take home. And I think it's a lasting appeal.
Interesting.
And just Jessica, thank you for, including teens in there. That's really nice to hear that, you've got things for all ages, which is great. Really some dynamic stuff for the teens and tweens. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I'm hopeful. I'm talking to the friends too. We're going to do a bookshop, and Janice and I have talked about this, and Bernadette and I, to have a bookshop in the YA room. That's a specific teen bookshop because, teens like everybody else, they like shopping, they like picking out their own books to buy. So just as another, as another draw.
Jessica, with that one question, if I may, is there anything that you need from us? You've got such great resources with the friends and you've got such great ideas between you and your staff. Is there anything in particular that you need from us, the trustees, to support you in this planning or any other planning that you're doing?
Not right now. I mean, I'm really big on marketing. So there might be times when I ask for advice or suggestions and reach out on marketing. Both marketing of events, marketing of collection, and technology is really big. Like I think of marketing and I think of like software and, like what technology are we using to market the library, or what technology are we marketing? So there may be times when I need that, and I'm new to this Spinny speaker series. I don't actually know much about it. So, as that affects youth, that might be something else. But I mean, I love planning events and I love marketing. So.
Then you'll be perfect for the Spinny speaker series. So just to put some color on that for you. We've had 3 different guest speakers. A lot of towns did what I refer to as Foxborough Reads for a number of years, where everybody in the town gets the book, and then there's a couple of events that culminate with a discussion about the book itself, whether it's the namesake and so people watch the movie, and then there's this, right? Where we got away from that a few years ago was trying to build a series that people knew was coming to town at a set period of time that was around the library, that was really being run by the library. And so we've had 3. We've had Nathalia Holt, who wrote a book called The Rise of the Rocket Girls. She was our kickoff. And so everything that was done as an event around that dealt with the stars or dealt with STEM. And with a big emphasis of STEM for females. So there were all different age groups that had different events there. Then we had Gregory Maguire, the author of Wicked. And so everything that came around that had to do with Broadway and Wicked and witches and things of that nature. And then the last one we had was Chris Bojalian came in to speak, and and Christine was instrumental in that. So I can turn that over to Christine and Manny. But just for context, we try to come up with things. We have had in the past a very supportive donor who has donated money towards the keynote event, which frees up the opportunity for us to then do other events that the Friends have supported or that we have used the library's trust funds to support, to try to make it as relevant as they are, to try to make it different than just a quote unquote speaker series that just sort of runs throughout the year, make it sort of a keystone thing.
Wonderful.
Any other feedback or any other questions for us, Jessica?
Not at this time. Thank you.
Well, fantastic job. If you've built this much momentum during a pandemic, I can't wait to see the work you're doing once we're all back and can be in person. So really appreciate and thank you for all the phenomenal work you're leading.
Thank you. Thanks.
All right. Anything else? Okay, so we're going to have some more serious. Moving on. Yes. To public input. Yeah, any public input?
No input.
No input. All right, we're rolling right along. And I may try to move our agenda. We're closing in on our second hour here, so I know we got a lot to cover still with COVID. So I'm going to make our pace brisk. Next, approval of the minutes. Any questions, comments, corrections in the minutes from our April 13th, 2021 meeting?
So moved to approve.
Moved by Mr. Kevin Penders, seconded by Christine Igo Freeman, and we'll roll call to vote. Catherine Uden.
Approve.
Kevin Penders.
Approve.
Joyce Parlapiano.
Approve.
Christine Igo Freeman.
Approve.
And Colin Ernst, I approve. 500. Minutes are approved. Manny, any correspondence?
No correspondence.
No correspondence. We approve. Friends report. Janice, big month for the Friends.
Well, as everybody has heard, we had a very successful book sale last week. I am kind of glad it's over because it's exhausting, but we made almost $3,000, $28.93. And people were really happy to be there and liked our selection of books. So it was great. And I checked with Manny today and made sure we put the library back together. And I guess we succeeded. The only other thing I wanted to ask if, talking to Leslie and our book sale chair, she really liked and felt that the quality of the books that we received by running the donation days, the drop-off days, was better than we have had in the past. And she thought perhaps we should continue with those. And I've talked to Kathy Lowy at the desk, and she said people are always asking, when are you going to collect books again? Mm-hmm. So with your permission, I'd like to be able to continue to run donation days at a schedule that we work out with Manny. So it might be once a month. If it gets closer to the book sale and we need more, we just work with Manny to schedule more. The Saturdays for a couple hours seems to work well. We do it by appointment so we can control how much is coming in, because we only have so much space. So we have to be, not go crazy. But seems the patrons like it, we like it, and it's been effective. So with your support, we'd like to be able to continue those.
Good. Any concerns with that plan? Excellent.
That's great.
Great. And that's really all. We'll be winding down next June 2nd is our next meeting, and then we'll be off for the summer. So
Great. And Kevin, you're joining that meeting, correct?
I will be there on June 2nd.
great. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Super. Thanks, Jeff. Congrats again. Great job.
Thank you. We
All
appreciate
right,
your support.
Oh, absolutely. Next, professional staff reports. Anything you want to highlight, Maddie, on the professional staff reports?
Yes, just a few items. With Kathy Belharney as the professional services librarian, she is in charge of displays, and she did this wonderful book display for Mother's Day. So I don't know if any of you saw that near the circulation desk, but she does a great job, book displays every single month. And a few months ago, we spoke about Library Aware, its new software, and I mentioned how they can create newsletters, and that's what Kathy did. She created a newsletter for the month of May, and they're emailed to all Boyden Library card holders. So that's one of the ways that Library Aware can be used. Going to Suzanne, I don't have anything with CDs, so I don't have any music reviews this month, but purchasing DVDs, YA books. Moving on to Jessica, and Jessica already touched on the new databases, Lightbox, Scholastic Teachables, Scholastic Bookflix, Team Book Cloud, and Rosen Health and Fitness. Fantastic new databases and resources for youth services. And then also Wildberry, which I know Jessica was a big fan of and wanted it, and she's working her magic with it. I finally know how to say Wildberry now. You know, she does a great job with it. And speaking with Tim, our reference librarian, some of the reference questions that he receives during the month, I'd just like to point out a few of them, just some of the resources and some of the duties with a reference librarian. A patron asking and locating application for a U.S. passport is one perfect example. Tax forms, because tax season was extended. So we still had our tax forms, so we don't have the specific forms. If it's one of those hard to find, rare tax forms, Tim's able to go on the IRS website and print out the form and instructions for the patron, and also helping a patron navigate the RMV website, which is never an easy task for anyone, but Tim was able to do that, renew a registration, and had a patron come in with a drawing of a bird and was able to help and assist the patron with various bird guides on what bird was drawn by this patron. Those are just some of the few, reference duties that Tim has for the month of May. Besides that, he's continuing to place nonfiction orders and weeding books. And for those who don't know what weeding means, it's basically he goes through the collection and checks on the books. If there's some wear and tear on certain nonfiction books, he'll purchase a new one. Or an example, a travel guide. If we have a travel guide for Memphis, Tennessee from 2012, Tim will get a new one for 2021. So that's what the weeding is. That's all I got.
Tell Tim I'll be by tomorrow morning for help with the RMV site, okay?
Okay. 10 o'clock.
I was just on the site today and could not find my way around.
Yeah.
Good. Any questions for Manny? All right, on to financial reports, please.
Yeah, so this financial report is through April 2021. We should be around 84 to 85%. We're currently at 83, so we're in the range to 100%. And it was mentioned, I believe it was last month, how some of the line items we did go over, and those will be adjusted for FY22 budget. And I guess we can tie this in with the FY22 budget town meeting. The budget was passed. So I want to thank the residents of Foxborough for supporting the library. And, that money will be used wisely. It will be, resources. It'll be for cleaning materials. We're looking forward to FY22 because I think there's a lot of big things on the horizon in this upcoming fiscal year. Very big. Still the unknown, but still, big things.
Into the great unknown.
Yes.
Any questions from Manny on financial reports? If not, we'll head into your director's report. Oh, sorry, Kevin.
So not so much a question as a statement. I think, Manny, as the guy who asked the question last month about the quote unquote overspend, one of the things that we do have to look at as we go forward next year into 22 is, as I'm looking at, this is April, so we still have May, June left. And you're right, on an overall basis, we're spending at about an 83% rate. But we have to take a close look, I think, at the areas going forward where we are in excess of 100% now, because those are continuing to grow. There's about 7 or 8 of them, and the streaming one being most significant. It's not big dollars. It's only $8,700, but a lot of that is because of meeting the needs from COVID and restrictions associated with access to the building itself and the way people are changing their use of our facility. So I just think we have to be really mindful of that as we enter the new budget cycle, because you have the money here to offset those overages, but as the library continues to grow in capacity, usage, and hours, and as we talk about going back, hopefully, to things like Sunday hours next year. And, we have to, a lot of those opportunities to offset these expenses may not be as present next year. So we have to just be mindful of that.
Thanks, Kevin. Excellent point. Okay. All right, why don't we move on to director's report, please?
Okay. Just highlight a few things. I do want to say a thank you to the Foxborough Garden Club. So every week they're dropping by a bouquet of flowers. We're beautifying the library, but we're also giving bouquets out to some of our patrons as well when they come in. So I do want to thank the Garden Club for doing that and thinking of the library. So thank you very much. COVID chats, plenty of COVID chats, and tomorrow there'll be quite a few COVID chats, actually, probably this week and next week with various topics. Some of the things that was discussed before was summer programming. Some libraries are not having summer programming. Tent rentals, renting tents, fundraising for the Friends. We're very, very lucky and fortunate to have such a strong Friends group where other libraries, and I'm just speaking in the sales network, where the Friends groups have folded or have put on hiatus during COVID. So we're very fortunate to have a strong group here. And then just COVID-related matters when it comes to employees being exposed and eating in the lunchroom and the ever-going topic of bathrooms being open. So that still goes on. Attended the department head meeting, and the main topic was the FY22 budget town meeting. And the town is working on an updated economic development business guide. So that is what they are working on. We have a new switch installed. Thank you, Foxborough IT, for helping out. With the new switch, we were able to update our security camera software. So we're good to go with that. And we're currently in the Massachusetts Library Association virtual conference. And I was actually a moderator today for a social media session. So I've been attending those. Jessica's been attending those, and Casey and Karen. I'll be attending a couple of more, all virtually. So we've been doing that. And town meeting, budget was passed, and the union contract was renewed. It was only a 1-year contract, and it's basically just a carryover with the intention of in FY22 to begin negotiations for the next 3 years. That's all she wrote.
Questions for Manny? All righty. Liaison report. So I failed to also revisit our liaison structure. We did our board reorganization. So let's open that can of worms again. Can we list through the different liaisons that we had? I know we had AdCom and Select Board. What else am I missing there?
That's it.
I'm going to recommend that we, because we have the budget AdCom, we kind of melded those together.
That makes sense.
The Select Board is typically, it's not all that often. It's when we have a new trustee denominator or other rare occasions like that. I'm going to recommend that we actually eliminate those two official capacities of liaisons and have those rolled into either ongoing business or those subcommittees that we've talked about earlier. Thoughts?
So those even predate the senile former chair who came up with the subcommittee structure. But the reality is those had more to do with areas of controversy and people who knew other people on those boards at that time. So I would suggest that if the selectmen need to get in touch with the trustees, they would do so through the executive board. However, that's comprised on a year-to-year basis. And as far as AdCom, I fully agree with you that it should be rolled into the folks that are working on the budget side. And typically is.
Other thoughts? Sound like a plan?
Yeah.
All right. So moved. So that concludes our liaison reports for today and forever.
Very effective.
There you go. Speaking of trustee subcommittees, the Spinny Speaker Series.
Mm-hmm.
So this was brought up last month. Kevin brought up, looking to explore a Spinny series for 2021. And I had reached out to various agencies that we've used in the past for our speakers. And going with the same theme we were before COVID, we were looking to broaden our subject matter for the Spinny series. And I have a list of authors that was sent. I believe I sent it a few weeks ago, and then I sent it with the packet with recommendations from myself. And I'd like to just speak on those two now, and then we can discuss any other authors, or if you want to discuss that we, table the series for an additional year, but things are looking better in the state of Massachusetts right now. So I had brought up two authors, Gish Jen, and then Nadini Bajpai, and I apologize if I am butchering that last name. I actually had a conversation with Nadini about her two books, and her new book has just been released, and it's called Sister of the Bollywood Bride. And I was asking her about it, and she says it's just like My Big Fat Indian Wedding instead of My Big Fat Greek Wedding, the movie that came out many years ago. It's based on a true story, personal story for her, where her sister were to be married in on Martha's Vineyard, and Hurricane Irene came through. And apparently the Indian wedding was supposed to be this huge, extravagant ceremony, and then it had to be condensed in a smaller location because of Hurricane Irene. The story takes place in the Boston area. And then her first novel is called A Match Made in Mehendi. And again, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that one. And that story deals with the family tradition of matchmaking. This one more has a young adult spin to it, where a high school student creates a matchmaking app. And it's a lighthearted story. And so that was her first one. So as far as the costs, I mean, Gish Jen does have a larger bibliography. But as far as costs, she's a lot more than Nadini. And I did, again, this was a few weeks ago, and again, everything's just changing, on a day-by-day basis right now. So I was, was taking taking into account if we do a spinny speaker series, would it take place at the Rodman Center? Would it still be closed? Would we have it here at the library? So I was looking at that. And then as far as programming, and I was just looking at Nadini's, both her works have an Indian culture behind it. So I know we're doing a henna program, but maybe we could revisit that again if it's very popular, or we could explore the culture of India. I'm a big fan of Bollywood. Explain what Bollywood is. Why do they dance in the middle of a horror movie? The tradition behind that. So that's what I was looking at. But again, Gish Jen does have a larger bibliography, and we can certainly, her topics kind of are various as well. So I was just looking at cost. Nadini lives in the Natick area, so it's not far as like a cost for travel. There wouldn't be any. So I was just, this is what I have. We can certainly discuss other authors on the list, or if you want to have a spinny speaker series where we would host it. I know we'll have to discuss this further. We're not going to decide everything this evening, but I thank Kevin for bringing this up, because it really, opened the floodgates when it came to the authors, and just various programs that we can have and introduce to, our patrons when they're starting to enter the building again.
So look to our events subcommittee folks to maybe take the lead on the discussion.
Okay.
Those sound great, Manny. Thank you for, doing that. I'm just trying to think of some, like you said, when it comes to programming, what kind of things we could incorporate with those. And I'm sure we could, be very creative and come up with things that we, just like we've done in the past for all different ages. I don't know much about that culture, I'll be honest. So I would have to be doing some research myself, which I'm perfectly open to and would be happy to do. And just see what other people think, of those choices, or the reality of doing this, are we thinking about the fall like we have in the past, or?
Yeah, another program I had thought of, if we do go with Nadini, one of her books does take place during a wedding, and just learning the culture of the wedding and the wedding attire, which is that's a whole subject into itself right there.
It's so funny that you say that, because I've attended an Indian wedding, and it was remarkably unique, both in its presentation and one of the things that I was struck, not only is the food the celebration of the food, an introduction, a different presentation, but especially the fabrics. Yeah. And I think it would be fascinating to share that because, most of the brides, they certainly don't wear white. They're wearing bright. The one I went to, the bride was in red, in a red sari, and then even the markings and the ornamentation and being invited into your own wedding. It was a tradition that couples invited to the reception, actually, piece of it, as opposed to hosting it. So it is some really nice cultural differences and approach it is very different. So I think that would be interesting. So it gives us a chance too to look at how we can introduce different foods and different fabrics and then different customs, and what would make those things different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I appreciate, Mandy, with your recommendations, focusing the series on broadening our perspective from a diversity and culture standpoint. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to really delve into that with this series. So appreciate that and agree, similar to what Christine and Joyce have said. How about in terms of the logistics? Should we chat a bit about, I think it sounds like there's some support in concept for not only the authors if the budget works out and some of the potential surrounding events. But when we think about now being, May 18th and the event typically 5 months from now, maybe we talk a bit of logistics and kind of open up the history books of how we've done this in the past and just kind of talk about some of that from a practicality standpoint. I know, Kevin, this some of what you were bringing up a couple meetings ago.
So, Christine's better served and Manny are better served to speak to that. But certainly there's runtime involved with mapping out the speaker, the facility, I think we're on time if we were to move forward with doing one. Arguably, maybe we're a month late. But in terms of mapping out events and programming and building things around it, I think there is time logistically to do, at least in the past, there has been time logistically to do what we're talking about doing. If we're looking at a late September, early October, which is typically, I think it's usually right before Columbus Day weekend is when we typically try to land the jet on this. And that's a really bad parlay to where I was going to go with my comment. So I apologize in advance. But looking at the list, Manny, that you have sent us, I would be remiss if I didn't throw out one other. I think that the idea of cultural diversity, like Colin has raised in the past, I stand entirely in doing. And I think that the two speakers that you have on the list that we've spoken about at some length here bring an opportunity for us to do that, especially with Nandini and the sort of cultural richness that can come from her event. I was looking over the list of the rest of the names that you sent. And I know you got them from elsewhere. It's not necessarily your list as much as it's a collection of available names. So I had two comments that I'd be remiss if I didn't say here. Number one, I think that the majority of that list is representative of available and marketable authors rather than meeting the niche that the board has challenged us to try to do in the next series if we're doing one. In terms of the diversity aspect and raising more cultural awareness aspects. And so it surprises me myself that the second comment I have is after having talked about diversity and having talked about female authors and supporting all of that going forward, one thing I did want to flag for everybody, and because of the timing associated with it, is the first speaker on the list. This first speaker on the list is all about 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
And we are, believe it or not, at the 20th anniversary this fall of 9/11. And as much as I think cultural diversity is critical for our commentary here, and doing an event around it is so important, I question whether or not we should be taking a moment to recognize the poignancy of the 20th anniversary. And so I'm not casting a vote one way or the other, but because I think there are reasons to do one and the other. And in fact, I think it may be a lot harder to do an entire series of events around 9/11. But when I looked at that, it really struck me that, Foxborough has its own history with 9/11. It's very real and very personal, and there are events here in town dedicated to it because of losses here associated with it. And it seemed to me that that's it's of relevance in a non-round year, I guess I will call it, in the sense of if we do 20th anniversary alumni events for colleges or high schools or marriages, then it may seem to me like this is a year where we should be considering paying attention to that. That was the only other speaker to me that jumped out in a way that warranted a discussion, separate and distinct from what we were trying to accomplish.
It's a really good point.
The one thing I think, and I agree, Kevin, there's, I think the importance of recognizing and honoring what happened 20 years ago, this September. I'd want to step back as a group and think about what's the right way to recognize, remember, and honor what occurred on 9/11, and what are the goals for this speaker series and its place in the community, and do those align? The answer may be yes, but it may be no. So I want to step back and just think about the purpose and the way in which I think what the series has done, engaging different segments of our population of this town of age and interest tied around a series. And I'm not opposed to it, but I want to be sure that we're mapping purpose of honoring 9/11 and purpose of the series and its role in the community, that those map. I would want them to map extremely well together for us to match those two. Otherwise, maybe there's different ways that we can do something for both. And we don't need to settle that discussion today, but I just want to encourage us to look at it through that lens of how do we support and honor both purposes.
Totally agreed. And I think it's a question of, ideally, it's something that I would encourage us to empower. To the extent it would be great if it was a slam dunk and you wanted to just move forward and empower the events group to just start. But it may be that with this list and with feedback tonight, that's something that they're able to consider and process, and we could launch them in June if we're not of one mind this evening.
Could we start it sounds like there may be a Joyce and Christine, a short list of 3 authors that seem to at least have mentioned this discussion. Maybe Manny, you can check their availability and cost, and we can start looking at logistics of dates of availability, whether the Marilyn Robbins Center is available, or whether it be, so start to line things up to see, okay, what's even doable, and that may drive some of our decisions. But maybe in June, Joyce and Christine can lead a discussion with the Board of Trustees and the staff attending around what's the appropriate way to proceed for the goals of the series.
And so that's in preparation of the next month's board meeting. Okay. I'm fine doing that. Yeah. In the past, has there been a budget, and I'm asking for history as far as, or how are the resources captured for doing these programs? So I don't see it as a line item on a budget.
Yeah, usually we meet as like a subcommittee and, meet with Manny and kind of come up with like a budget that we think is, manageable. And then we bring it back to the whole board.
Okay.
This is what we're thinking. These are the activities. These is the, and this is what we would like to, kind of just go through it ourselves and then ask for approval.
So we can do a proposal. Yeah. Okay.
And in the past, we've had a benefactor who has made a substantial donation.
That's what I assumed. I just didn't know what to follow, for history. Thank you.
Christine, Joyce, anything else on the series we should cover today?
I don't think so. I think you've brought up a really good point, though, of giving us some food for thought of how to move forward.
Yeah, I will reach out to the agency as far. I know the fee for the two authors that I brought to the table, but I can certainly reach out to the agency that represents the other author. You can do that.
Great.
Zukov.
If you and Christine and Joyce can communicate between now and the next meeting. So we'll
Yeah, and I know for availability, those two authors that I had presented, I know they are available in the fall. Their fee is kind of from one spectrum to another. So that's, I'll reach out to the third author. We'll check availability, fees, and then Marilyn Rodman. I'm guessing they will be open, and checking their availability because,
Okay.
They could have a lot of demand. Yeah.
Hey, Janice.
Is there any reason why we can't do both? Could we do the book as kind of like a Foxborough Reads to recognize, and then later in the month go into the spinning series? Kind of, you have your low and then have your high, it sounds like.
From my perspective, I don't think there's any reason why we couldn't do both. And I guess the question, I just wanted to
represent it.
I wanted to pose the question of, if you were going to be able to do an event series, what would it, and this is what I would ask Joyce and Christine and Manny to be thinking about, and Jessica and maybe Kathy as well, right? Is if you were going to be doing a speaker series on X, what would it look like? If you were going to do it on Y, can you do it at all in a way that, as Colin notes, is appropriate and respectful and manages to be meaningful? If not, then yes, is there a way to do something with the anniversary, assuming that that's the one that we're not moving forward with as a speaker series, that is timely and responsive, and then yes, whether that's us funding it or the friends funding it and we come and ask you for funds, or is it something that we're doing together, and how that all comes together is another question mark. Yeah, but
well,
it's that way they've got the options.
It seems like the town is apt to do something, and for the 20th anniversary, I would guess, and perhaps we could partner with them for that event and keep the spinny series separate. Just a thought.
Good thought.
We can talk about that.
Receiving, yeah.
So we'll explore that next month as well in context. Excellent. Thanks, Jen. All right. Anything else on the speaker series before we move on? Christine.
Just to say, ask Manny if, once he gets that information, if you could just let Joyce and I know, and we'll keep in touch over the next month.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Why don't we move on to new business?
So just an update on the website. So a rough template has been created and has been sent out. Jessica is working with the webmaster on the children's or kids page and also the teen page. He is working on the header and the logo area. We had images of the exterior, and that took a little while to get. We wanted to get the photographs that were taken from the architectural firm LLB. So I did have to reach out to them, and then they had to reach out to the photographer and ask if we could use high quality, high resolution photos of the exterior of the library. And the photographer, good news, said, yes, we may, as long as we credit him, which is no problem with that. So those photos have been sent to the webmaster as well, because they have fantastic photos, especially the one at night. That one is probably my favorite. And he was able to remove the power lines as well, because all the other photos have the power lines in there. So so that's good news. So yeah, we're making progress.
Actually, and you're happy with the pace?
I am, yeah, I am. It took a little while. He was having issues with a section when it comes to, of all things, the trustee minutes and the agenda, but that's been resolved.
The important parts. All right, great. Any other, I guess that's part of old business as well. Any other new business, Manny?
Nothing else new.
Got it. So we covered the website and the old business. So the big, I guess the one of many big topics this month.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah, I had a prepared written, notes and everything, and that got pushed aside as of yesterday. Spending the last 24 hours or so scrambling, speaking to other directors, what's going on, what does this mean? So if you haven't heard the news, which I'm sure you all have, the governor came out yesterday and said beginning May the 29th, which is Saturday, that capacity can be up to 100%, which that part didn't surprise me. That part didn't, I wasn't shocked with that because I had heard rumblings of that happening. I guess what did shock me was the masks mandates. So that was the big one. So I had reached out to various library directors, and the thing is, with the state, with the reopening guidelines, library is not listed anymore. When COVID started, libraries had its own section, and now libraries are in a miscellaneous section now. So it is what it is. So I had reached out to the Board of Health director here in Foxborough. That was my first conversation to figure out what exactly is the town's intentions when it comes to May 29th. And I had a lengthy conversation with him where they would encourage patrons entering a building to wear a mask, not mandate, but encourage. They are working on a policy or a guidance where we be based on 3 colors: green, yellow, and red. Green being everything's all good. Red being things have gotten really bad again. We strongly encourage you to wear a mask. They are working with the town manager and the assistant town manager, and will have a policy of some sort out before the 29th. There will be further discussion at tomorrow's department head meeting. I then reached out to Mark Craig, who I do work with the Council on Aging, because I wanted to figure out what they are doing. And Mark gave me some statistics when it comes to COVID vaccinations in Foxborough. So 62% of Foxborough residents are fully vaccinated, which is excellent. That's outstanding compared to many cities and towns. And then even better, as far as seniors, 96%, which is a home run or grand slam. That's fantastic that the town of Foxborough is taking this seriously. So that was the good news. So I did ask Mark what the intentions of the Council on Aging, what are they going to do come June 1st, because they're closed on the weekend. They will no longer, and I'm saying this before there'll be a robocall out, but there will no longer require masks being worn in the building. They will encourage masks, and I think that's the word that you're going to see a lot, encourage masks. And this is specific to individuals fully vaccinated. The problem, and this is something that, no one, we can't, the town hall can't, Council on Aging, no one, a Shaw's or a Stop and Shop, well, I guess they could, but as far as public buildings, we can't determine if someone's had the COVID vaccine or not. We can't be a bouncer at the door and say, let me see your card, enter, or no, you can't enter the building. So that's one thing, and that's going to remain. That's never going to change with that. Their community rooms will be open as well, starting June the 1st. So I spoke with him. I spoke again with the director of the Board of Health, and I spoke with Mike Johns as well. And town hall is going to be open as well. So, and spoke to other directors, and they seem to be in the same boat that I'm in right now. So I guess tonight, originally I was gonna, as far as capacity, I had a document to have between 30 and 50%. Well, I guess we can just put that aside. 100% would be 367 patrons in the building. We're not gonna get 360 patrons in the building. It's not gonna happen right now. I'll be lucky if we get 100. So as far as the capacity, I would just like to, as of, what day was it again? May 29th, which is Saturday, we will be open 10 to 5, that we just go to 100% as far as capacity. As far as the mass, I like to work hand in hand with the other facilities in town, and coincide when it comes to the Council on Aging and when it comes to Town Hall as of May 29th again, that we no longer require the masks, that we encourage. I think if we still require the masks and other town buildings do not, you got to think about the staff, because the staff are the ones that's going to get the onslaught of patrons coming in saying, well, I don't have to wear a mask, but I have to wear a mask here. So that is not fair to the staff. I've already had a few gunslingers coming in without a mask and had to speak to them, and they stated their opinions on, they think this is all foolish, but hey, and I think you're going to see a lot more of that. Again, we can't, anyone can walk in the building. So that's where we are, please, I'd like to discuss this. It's changing. It's ever so changing. This could all change by next week, but yeah.
So, Maddie, if masks are highly encouraged for patrons,
yeah,
what's the guidance you're giving to staff?
Same thing for staff. You know, I encourage you to wear a mask. You don't have to wear a mask if you've been fully vaccinated. And that's what the other town buildings that I spoke to and other libraries, the directors have said.
Manny, I guess the question I would ask of you in this discussion, because one, we're reacting to news that came out yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure that and this isn't your fault. I just think it's happening in real time. I mean, your intended ask of us went out the window because of yesterday. Yeah. And I think that's, reality of where we sit and the reality of the disease and what we're dealing with as we're all trying to respond to that. I guess from my perspective, and it's exclusively mine, considering the patrons that we typically have, why would we be concerned about what we have to be concerned about what town hall is doing in terms of the message it's sending for the community. But why are we concerned about town hall or the rec department or other buildings in town versus something like the school department, where the vast majority of our patrons are going to be tied to that? Their guidance is fairly clear. It doesn't include libraries. And I guess the other thing I would say is, and we're not going to have clear guidance on this encouraged to use dynamic until later on this month.
I'm more concerned about the staff. And I think that's where you have to put it into perspective right now, especially that circulation desk. That's the front line.
Mm-hmm.
I'm up here on the second floor, but I have to think of the staff at that circulation desk. If there are other buildings that are not requiring it, they're the one that's going to have to face the wrath, and it's not fair to them.
But Mass Board of Library Commissioners hasn't come out with guidance on this yet.
No.
And the governor's guidance that is out does note that inside K through 12 public schools, collaboratives, and approved special education schools, and as otherwise required by DESE, which you're not subject to, the requirement applies to students, teachers, and staff. So anybody inside a school building is still expected to be wearing a mask.
Yeah.
So I guess that's my point is, until we have clearer guidance from the Mass Board of Library Commissioners and from the administration as to whether libraries look like schools or look like police and fire buildings, I'm not sure that we're in an adequate position to make a determination on loosening a mask restriction.
I don't think you're going to get it from the NBLC. We haven't got anything. The last few items when it comes to guidance, when it comes to the quarantine, I mean, that came from the state. It didn't even come from the NBLC. They kind of handed that part off to the state. At the start, they were really involved. They had their own steps. They had their own phases. Now they relied on the state. And you're right. I mean, the whole thing is going by so fast. And yeah, it may be a quick reaction, but I got to think about the staff, especially that circulation desk. It's not right for them to be in the line of fire. And other libraries are having the same issue, and the directors I spoke to, they're going to do the same thing when it comes to lifting the mask and strongly encourage.
And so, Manny, just to be clear, when you say certain staff are, figuratively in the line of fire, you're meaning they're having to address people's complaints who do not want to wear a mask versus they're in the line of fire of potentially infected individuals being in close contact with them, which is so we're clear as a group.
Correct. So when I say in the line of fire, I'm talking about the anger and frustration from patrons saying, well, why do I have to wear a mask? The shields will still be up. You know how we have the shields around the desk? We'll keep those up. But yeah, when the line of fire, I should say the wrath of of patrons, why don't I have to wear a mask? I've already faced within the past week the wrath. It was my first anti-masker for the library, but it was handled. And they ended up coming back wearing a mask. But everything changes so quick. I mean, who knows? We're discussing this now, and things could change by Friday.
So what's the recommendation there so that we can give you the feedback and support that you need in the context of everything is changing so fast? This news is 36 hours old or whatever it is, not even. What's the request? I guess I'm not clear on what our steps should be. So let's start with what you would like to pursue.
So I have, my few recommendations. Recommendation number one would be the capacity at 100%. Again, we're not going to get 357 in the building, but that seems to be the least of our issues would be the capacity. So that would be the first one.
But to be clear, you mean on May 29th?
May 29th, yes. Okay. Yeah, you're correct. I'm sorry. Yes, so that's next Saturday.
Okay, so why don't we kind of look at these in full so that's the first one. The second one is?
Second one would be the big one, would be the mass. And then the third one would be the community room, opening that up for the public again. One thing that the board voted on many moons ago before COVID was food being prohibited. And I think this is a very good reason. That's one of the things good about COVID. We're not going to have programs or any organizations coming in with the buffet of food anymore. That's gone. The trustees voted on prohibiting food pre-COVID. So those are the three big ones.
Okay. I'm just trying to think about how much these are intertwined or not. I think the easiest one to kind of, although not easily peel apart, I guess the easiest of the three would be on the capacity, given what you would expect it to be versus what the full capacity is.
Yeah.
Now one could say, okay, my opinion on that changes whether people are wearing masks or not, right? But what are trustees' thoughts on the capacity one? Or do we need to start with the mask question? I don't know. I'm struggling a little bit here. Christine? And Catherine? I think you're muted, Christine.
Sorry. Okay. Do we have a say when it comes to that 100% capacity, or is it the governor is saying 100%, right? And do we even have a say?
Oh yeah, you could say 50% or
okay.
Even if we go to 50%, which is 100 and I think it's 188. We're not going to touch that.
Right.
Catherine?
So I guess stating how many people or what percentages of people are fully vaccinated doesn't apply, because you don't know if someone's coming from another place, Attleboro, whoever. Like it's a global pandemic, so like unless you're gonna a bubble around Foxborough, it really doesn't count. So but I also think that, especially I think now that I think a lot of people will continue. This is just my opinion. I deal with this at work a lot. I think people will be more willing to wear their masks, the majority, inside versus the people who won't. So I think if you strongly encourage, especially until further notice, I think inside people will. And I know you'll have your maskless, face-bearing people, but I think those will be fewer than you think.
Yeah, I agree with that. And Catherine, I mean, you're right. I mean, we're going to have people coming from all, but it's going to happen everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
It's
Joyce, Kevin, what are your thoughts?
One of my first thoughts is we really need to start trusting the vaccine. We've gone through 15 months of wearing masks. We've done the work to get to this place. Certainly I almost worry that people that do choose to wear a mask might be made fun of, which is not what you want to see either. I think people, certainly if they choose not to be vaccinated, we won't know if they are or are not wearing masks. It's a stigmatized situation that way, because we really don't know in either case. But I personally, after this time and putting in the work that we have as a community, I think it's time to learn to be a little more comfortable. And I love the idea of having the stages of the green, the red, the yellow. So if we're wrong, we can pivot and change quickly back to what we know has worked. It's, none of us know what really lies ahead, or what type of efficacy we have, by our vaccinations. But I think it's an ongoing process that they're keeping close watch on. So I don't think something's going to develop without us knowing about it, or take us much by surprise. That's my thought.
Kevin, anything you want to add?
I mean, I struggle with what we should do on next Saturday, when we only have half-informed guidance as to what's happening, and we're rolling things out in real time. And I think that it's important for us to be doing things that protect staff, protect patrons. I mean, there's no small bit in irony to me that the State House is closed to the public and for business. And we're talking about more access for the library. So I think that, I guess to the point of, Manny's raising, I appreciate that. I don't want to put the CERC desk in a position where they're incurring wrath. I also think that, we're discussing a very significantly pivoted notice on what was otherwise going to be a discussion about occupancy increases in the existing building. So I struggle with that. I think, Manny, to your point, a lot of libraries have been closed throughout the duration, or with very minimal availabilities to their patrons. And we have been far more open than other neighboring facilities and other facilities with a wider circulation than we have. So I think that we have met the challenge. We have worked hard to be accessible. If the town is doors are open, then there's an expectation that we will be as well. And if we as a board are comfortable at 100%, I mean, the Red Sox seem to be ready to take your ticket sales and let you in the door. I don't know, as a guy who got engaged at Fenway Park, when the next time I'll be sitting in a seat at Fenway Park is, if I have to sit there with 37,000 of my closest friends and strangers. And I'm certainly not looking forward, Colin, to inviting a court challenge on whether or not somebody has to wear a mask. But I do think that, and I agree with Joyce. I think we have to trust the vaccine for those people who have it, and for those people who have had their 1 or 2 shots and their incubation period and are done. But I submit that, again, a vast majority of the population that spends time with us may not be in that position. And, certainly the kids aren't. And Some of their parents aren't, for a host of different reasons. So I am conflicted on my vote, Colin, as to how we would proceed.
I'm pretty sure we all wouldn't want to be the first ones to make the decision one way or the other. I think the fact that things are changing, we do have 11 days, 10 days before things change for everybody with regard to requirements. Or considerations.
I think Manny's recommendation to staff and patrons, a strong recommendation to continue to wear a mask, to continue to practice distancing and other, cleaning protocols, enables those who may not be vaccinated, who just simply want extra precaution to be able to do so, while also trusting the science and the CDC recommendations in terms of the level of safety that occurs even without a mask, without that distance in those closed spaces. So I would be supportive of moving forward with maybe the 50% occupancy and masks strongly encouraged, pending any other definitive guidance one way or the other from, I guess I would say numerous sources, whether it's town hall, whether it's the state, whether it's DESI, that causes the director to reconsider the path. I don't want to be way out in front of this. I also don't want to be way out behind this either.
Yeah.
I think there's also there's a level of responsibility to not do either, right? Where either slow things down or we get in the way. So that'd be my recommendation. But I'd love for us to have some discussion on what our guidance back to Manny is and what we're comfortable as a board approving today in terms of changes, if any, from our current situation.
I will throw in there too, Colin, and I'll just give an example, the state of Rhode Island. So today they started the businesses can, I know of one in Tiverton where it's a grocery store. You don't have to wear a mask anymore. It's encouraged, but it's not enforceable. But what the state of Rhode Island did that the state of Massachusetts has not, and they may do, but I'm not holding my breath, but they did specify public libraries in Rhode Island. And to enter a public library, you need to wear a mask. And that's right on the Office of Library Services. They're not doing it in the state. They may, but again, I won't hold my breath on that. I mean, for libraries now to be relegated to miscellaneous or wherever we're in the reopening plan. I don't see it. The MLA, the MBLC, and MLS, when this started, wrote letters of communication to the governor as far as the vaccines, being involved in the early stages of vaccines, and was met with no response. So, yeah.
What are folks' thoughts? Steve?
I would say I like that, Colin, that you said 50% capacity, and I'd look to Manny to see if you were comfortable with that, Manny, of 50% capacity.
Yeah, so 50% would be 180 people in the building.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we're going to get close to that right now. We're not even getting even close to 30 right now. So, yeah, I'm fine with that. 180 is fine.
But it almost sounds like it's not necessary because they're self-complying anyway. It's sort of like, we talk about seats at church, and we don't have a problem with having too many people come to church, unfortunately, so, or at least so they can state it, but it's not been an issue through this whole thing. If all of a sudden we have a rush on people coming in, well, then, maybe we'll have been foolish not to have said, but it just seems like it's not necessary if you really don't feel, well, even if we stated it, we wouldn't have 180 people.
Yeah, I would be curious where they would all park.
Yeah, that could be a deterrent.
Get shuttles.
New parallel parking on the common. Different topic.
Yeah.
Christine, yeah.
And then as far as the community room, I just think we leave it closed if that's, I just feel, if we're within our.
Just not ready to open.
Right.
Yeah.
I just think, and then with the mask, I think it sounds like the best we can do is the strongly recommend and strongly encourage, and just hopefully along with that, just, be respectful, just continue to be respectful patrons of our library. And if people choose to wear a mask or don't choose to wear a mask, and, I just feel like that's the best we can do right now is to strongly encourage people to still be cautious and respectful.
Mm-hmm.
Catherine?
I agree with everything that Christine just said.
Mm-hmm.
I think I do too, but I just want to challenge the fact that you've modified the hours, the occupancy. You've modified the community room use because you felt like those are, and collectively, folks feel like those are okay to modify, but you're not modifying masks because for some reason that leg of the stool we're worried about. So we are being somewhat internally inconsistent with this because we're not willing to say 100% and the doors are wide open, but we are willing to say choose your own adventure on the mask.
Well,
so
I don't know if I fully agree. Having that 180 capacity, which we don't expect to meet, gives us some buffer of protection that we can have patrons and staff in a called a mixed mask environment without being too crowded, right? I don't think you can apply one standard across all of these. It's how are we mixing and matching these things to get the right environment for staff and patrons. I guess my question on the community room, I guess I'm not clear why that's not being reopened if every other part of the library is available. We're up in capacity. Outside the library, people can gather in shops and restaurants and town offices. So I guess, I want to understand that first before I make a recommendation one way or the other.
I guess to jump back to the masks, I guess because it's a hot topic, I guess. And I feel like I'm listening to what Manny's saying, and some people could go into the library and unfortunately the people behind the desk might have to, and I feel for them. And I just think, you know what, we're all adults here, and you leave it up to those people, you wear a mask, you don't wear a mask, like you said, at least the people at the desk are still protected. They're behind the glass. Mm-hmm. I just feel like you're opening up a larger can of worms by, especially if people, like Nanny said, if people can go elsewhere in the town. Well, when I go here, I don't have to. Why are you doing? I don't know. I just think you're asking for trouble.
Others?
And that's just my opinion. I just trying to keep the peace.
I agree with Christine, just because I think more people will be compliant than you think. I think most people will wear their mask, and there'll be your random maskless people. But I think for me, we were talking about masks, and my whole family was like, "Oh no, I'm not going to the grocery store without my mask." Just even if you could, I think I will have a stash of masks forever. Come flu season, go on a plane, I'm wearing that mask. So
There'll be some
Sorry,
staff
Kevin.
here wearing masks 24/7, like how they're doing it now. Some wear gloves too. So, especially at circulation. It's
Annie, have you had a chance to ask your staff about this and if they have an opinion, or have you not opened up that can of worms?
no. I've spoken to a few staff about it, and their concern was my concern about, if we say no, everyone wears a mask, then they're going to get the wrath, because it's been, and I'm not saying anything new. These last 15 months or so have been horrendous, and
Yeah.
I commend staff for adjusting throughout this whole chaotic situation, and we're still changing. So, and this kind of, I think, surprised everybody. I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah. It was just like, oh, wow, here we go. It's like getting thrown in the deep end of the pool, learn how to swim type of thing. But yeah, the staff that I have spoken to, their concerns were the same as my concerns, and just dealing with the angry patrons, and they're still getting adjusted to the capacity. Again, we're not going to reach 180, but we may have 70 patrons in the building, which would be great. I think we were close to that during the Friends book sale. So
Wow.
I don't think we went over because we had a monitor, but we were close.
Wow.
But see an increase.
I think the one thing I want to suggest we think about with respect and appreciation for the staff and what they've dealt with, if we feel it is the right decision from a safety standpoint to be sure everyone wears a mask, then we should do that. And we need to ask the staff to continue to deal with grumpy patrons. I'm not saying that's the right decision. We need to start with safety. Not if it's not safe to open in that environment, then we shouldn't open, and it shouldn't be about having to deal with, because we had to deal with grumpy patrons for 15 months because it was a safe thing to do. We need to start there. I don't want to make this decision based on we don't want to have to deal with unruly people. Now, if we believe the right thing for the library, its staff, and its patrons are to make masks highly encouraged but not mandatory, because that's the right thing as we're embracing the science, embracing what the town and the country are doing, then we should do that. Again, I'm concerned though if we're driving it, again, all respect and appreciation for the staff. I'm not having to deal with those grumpy people, so it's easy for me to say, but I think it's the right thing. We need to focus on the safety and the science versus the people management, as difficult as it is to say that.
I mean, Colin, I do think I think the word encouraging patrons I think that's the way to go. I mean, I'm fully vaccinated as of Thursday. Will be my 2 weeks. So I have the option of entering a Stop and Shop without wearing a mask. That's my decision. But yeah. No, I think we need to trust the science. We strongly encourage. And I do have when it comes to the staff, I'm thinking about the patrons as well. We do have frustrated patrons, and I understand where they're coming from too, where, wearing the mask the entire time they're in the building, but yeah.
Janice, do you want to happen?
Whoops. When you say you strongly encourage, I'm wondering, I think you can encourage me. I'm not a mask person. I can't wait to get rid of the mask, to be perfectly honest. I'm fully vaccinated. That's why I got vaccinated. But I understand other people are not ready to let go. And if I saw a sign that said, our staff would greatly appreciate you wearing a mask, that's what would make me wear a mask. It's the appreciation of, I want to wear a button that says, if you want me to wear a mask, just ask me to, and I will. But otherwise, I don't want to wear it. But, because if you don't want to wear one and I don't want to wear one, I don't want to wear it. But if you want me to wear one, I will wear one. So if there's some way we could convey kind of more, that, appreciation for someone to wear a mask. And I think people probably will when they're in direct contact, but when they're off, like at a study room or something, I can see them starting to pull it down. When there's no one around, because there are people that squirrel away in corners and there's no one around. I would hope that, people, when you approach the circulation desk or the reference desk, that you would wear one. So just a
I
thought.
like that. Appreciate Boyd and Library appreciates you, but for wearing a mask. We're not enforcing it. We appreciate you wearing one. If they don't wear a mask, they,
It sounds like a friend's fundraiser. You could sell the buttons
Marketing.
with a mask,
Yeah.
and they could hold the mask on the button.
Oh, brilliant.
book
Brilliant
shop
marketing.
recommend.
I don't know. Sometimes where's our marketing team? It's all
There
the
you
way
go.
you market it.
Yeah.
It's part of a new subcommittee. They'll get back to you.
Excellent, Janice.
Any other? I think we should try and get to a vote and give Manny some guidance here, but I want to be sure we don't cut off conversation. Catherine, anything else from your perspective?
I guess. Oh, sorry.
No.
Catherine?
No, I'm all set.
Manny, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm sorry. I thought you said Manny. I apologize, Catherine. Let's circle back to community rooms. Should we open them? Should we table till next month? I mean, I understand Kevin's point. It's kind of like all or nothing,
Well, it doesn't have to be. I mean, that's not right. But I do think that if your argument was trusting the science and you're trusting the guidance that's being given, then it seems to me like on May 29th, you'd be open for business. Masks would be suggested, advised or appreciated, and the community room would be available for booking. And I'm not making a motion to ask for that.
And I would agree. I'm changing what I said earlier to keep it closed. Like I agree. I didn't think of that perspective. That, like you said, if we're open for business, we're open for business. So I guess that is very contradictory if we're saying, come on in, but guess what? You can't. So I'm changing where I was. I didn't think of it from that perspective. So I would say, if we're open up the community room.
Any other discussion? Should we? I think we should, make a motion for a proposed plan, and we can then discuss and then vote. Manny, does what Christine just articulated reflect your recommended path?
Yes.
Okay. And so I think, based on what Manny's request as director of the library, what Christine is as a trustee, and I think similar, if not fully overlapping, comments have been made by the board. Christine, would you like to make a motion for what you just recommended that we can discuss and then vote?
Okay, I guess moving forward to May 29th. As of May 29th, the board and library will be open for 50% capacity. As far as masks will be strongly encouraged, and the board and library staff would greatly appreciate your wearing a mask when in this facility. And the community room will be reopened as of May 29th. So that, I guess, is my motion, in keeping with state and local COVID updates. I'm not sure if that's the right lingo, but Kevin, help me out. Is that sound all right?
I think that'll serve your purposes. Yeah.
Give me a second.
I can second that.
Seconded,
Yeah.
seconded by Kath. Thank you, Joyce. I think Catherine
Kevin got
seconded
ahead.
first.
Good.
But we have a third.
Okay.
Any discussion on the proposed and seconded and third in motion? Kevin.
Yeah, just quickly, I will abstain on this vote. I think that this whole discussion has shown that whether we trust the science or trust the policy, we're not quite sure what either one of those is. And as an informed body, I'm not sure that we're there. As a well-intentioned body, I think you are, but I won't vote for this.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Is there any hardship foreseeable with the responsibility of opening up the community room that will add a burden, unnecessary burden at this time? Should that be something that's phased in after we have some proof that of use?
Well, as far as the community room, how that works is if there's a library program in there, and there's no library programs scheduled.
Right.
There may be one with children's. It's the metal workshop that may be held indoors rather than over at the town common. But it would be the responsibility of the organization. Toastmasters is one of them. They're the ones that's responsible for setting up the room, setting up the chairs, not the staff. It's their responsibility.
I didn't know that. Thank you.
Yeah. And then as far as booking the room, you book the room online, and then Pam or Kathy Belharney will approve it as long as they follow the guidelines. Again, stressing that absolutely no buffet style food, anything of that nature is entering those rooms.
What, Manny, what about cleaning of that space after they've used it?
If there's a meeting that evening, I will inform the cleaning crew to do a thorough clean of the community room or the fuller room, basically what they're doing now.
Okay.
There's no additional charge because it hasn't been
Yeah, no, that's part of the original contract with the rooms. They just haven't had to clean them.
Wow.
Any other discussion? I'll call the vote then. Catherine Uden.
I agree.
Kevin Penders.
I abstain.
Joyce Paul-Piano.
I agree with this.
Christy Naga-Freeman.
Agree.
And Colin Ernst, I agree. So 4-0-1.
If any guidance comes from the state regarding libraries, obviously that would take precedent. Again, I'd be shocked if there is, but stranger things have happened, especially recently.
Appreciate the thoughtful discussion. I know this is as seemingly as challenging coming out of this as it was heading into it in some ways. I know not in reality, but certainly no shortage of complexity. So appreciate the thoughtful discussion. All right. Anything else not on the agenda, Manny, that we need to cover off before we adjourn?
No, I think we're good.
We covered a lot of ground. I know this was a pretty robust meeting between board reorganization and the Spinney series. A great update from Jessica. Thank you, Jessica, again. And of course, the reopening of the library. So appreciate everyone's stamina. Now that it's 9:18, I will look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Pender, seconded by Ms. Uden. All in favor, Catherine Uden.
Agree.
Agreed. Kevin Penders.
Colin, I have a question before I vote. We are adjourned to meet again in virtual session in June. since the state of emergency has not been lifted at that point, or in some other format?
I don't know. I would recommend that we meet if the library is open for business, I would recommend that we meet, but I'm open to that, whatever the board prefers. How does the state of emergency?
That's mid-June.
They're out on.
It's June 15th.
Yeah, it comes after our plan.
Does that prohibit meetings in person, or it gives guidance recommending format?
There have been other meetings, municipal meetings, that have been happening in person. So if that's what the chair wishes to do, then that's what we would do.
That'd be my recommendation. But if there's any concern, I'd like to hear that before we make a decision.
I'm not concerned about it. I raised the question so we'd all know.
So we know where to go next month. So unless there are any concerns or objections, we'll plan to meet in person for our June meeting.
Which means we'll need to book the room.
Person next door.
Good thing we just reopened it.
First one.
Right.
So with that clarified, Mr. Chair, I vote to adjourn.
Joyce Parlapiano?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, and Christine Hager-Freeman?
Adjourn.
And Paul Ernst-Stern. So 5-0-0, we are adjourned. Thank you again, everyone. Good meeting. A lot done. Thank you, Manny. Thank you, Pam. Thank you, Mike, and the Foxborough Cable Access folks.
Yes, thank you.
And thank you, Janice. Sorry, Janice. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Have a good night.
Good night.